Hello, I'm Charles Moffat, and oh look, I'm using a tripod today. You can actually see both of my hands. Anyway, this is my backyard, part of it. And over here, that's aconite. These little yellow flowers that you see there, that's aconite, which is a super poisonous flower. The whole plant is basically poisonous. The root, the stem, the flower, everything. It's similar to wolfsbane and monk's, also known as monk's hood. Anyway, this book is The High King, which is the fifth and last book of the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. And I have finished reading all of them. In fact, I finished reading this one like over a month ago. It's just I've been delaying making the video, partially because it's really cold outside. And now the snow is melting. You can see the snow is melting right in front of you. Anyway, now, and we got flowers out. Spring is finally here. And I do like making these videos outside. Now, if you hear some noise in the background, that's because it's rush hour right now. Yeah. There's noises going by. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was great. And it wasn't until after I finished reading it that I realized that it bears some similarities to a different book. Specifically, T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone. And I didn't realize that the High King and everything else, blah, 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 the sword, all this other stuff that happens. I did not realize until afterwards that is very loosely based on the Sword and the Stone. There's obviously a huge number of changes, a lot of changes. So I'm not going to go into the details of all the changes in terms of new characters that were introduced, all the stuff that goes on. But there's a lot of stuff that happens, and it makes you just realize, like, oh, it's still based on the Sword and the Stone, even though it's dramatically different from that, but also remarkably similar at the same time. There's like so many things that are different, but yeah. Now, T.H. White's The Sword and the Stone was basically just one little book, and Lloyd Alexander came along and wrote 5 books, and then a 6th book, which is an anthology, which I'm going to review separately at a later date. But this one, is what we're reviewing today. So here's the other books. There's the Book of Three, The Black Cauldron. Some of you may be familiar of it was a movie produced back in the 80s called The Black Cauldron, which is basically just they took the Book of Three and The Black Cauldron and smucked the plots together and produced one film, which is kind of really doesn't like barely covers the concepts of what happens in the books. So if you want to know more about what's actually going on, read the books. It's kind of weird that they just we're going to skip over this book, go straight to that one, and include some bits from this one. So that was kind of weird. And then, of course, there's the Castle of Lear, Turon Wanderer, which I previously reviewed. And this is the anthology piece, the Foundling, and what else does it say? And Other Tales of Prydain. Yeah. Or actually, it also says it right there, doesn't it? Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, I really enjoyed the books. I look forward to reading these to my sons when they're older. I like the fact that there's a map in here, and it's not a complicated looking map. It's actually a fairly simple map. It looks like these are like squiggly lines over here. This looks like somebody took a pen and just went, wee! Like, this is a mountain range, wee! You do not need to make the maps complicated or you don't need to go full Tolkien to make a map that looks decent, okay? This is literally, wee! These are my mountains. This is how I draw my mountains. But it still works, so it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And honestly, it's such a good book. You really don't care that the map just goes wee. Yeah, it is a good book though, and I do look forward to reading these again someday when I read them to my sons, my son Richard and my son Arthur, and it's interesting because there's tiny spoiler here. Characters do die. Okay, and you think of these are being essentially children's books or definitely not young adult, because I do feel like they're more like preteen almost. Like these are books kind of like geared towards like a 12-year-old, or a 10-year-old even. So, but you would think that characters don't normally die in a book geared towards like a 10 or 12-year-old. So this is a bit more mature than that. Okay, so you can read this as an adult and still be like, oh no, stuff does happen, bad things still, come to pass and things like that. But at the same time, it still has this wonderful ending. It still has a really nice ending. Yeah, a good book. I look forward to reading it again years from now. So it's not one of those ones that it will sit on the shelf and be like, I'll forget about it. This is one of those ones where I'll sit on the shelf and I'll be looking forward to reading it to my son eventually. Yeah, both of my sons. So I'll have to read it like 3 times at least. And I do kind of feel like these, like, if it was done properly, you could make a TV series or a book or a movie series of these, but you would really have to do it properly and not do what they did back in the 80s, which is they like smuck these 2 books together and then make one film, which was like, I enjoy the film, but it's not fantastic. It's like 4 stars out of 5. Being generous. Yeah. Now, you may have noticed I don't give star reviews of books. I either like a book or I don't. So if I like a book, I give a thumbs up. That's it. I don't believe in giving star reviews because here's the thing about books. They're kind of subjective as to whether you will like them. Some people might not like this book because they might find it to be too childish. They'd be like, oh, I can't deal with this, the book's too childish. But honestly, I felt that this was surprisingly mature, even for a children's book. So, yeah. Like, this is like the Game of Thrones of children's books. You have characters dying. Yeah. It just happens. And it wasn't just this one either. There was characters dying, like, back in earlier books, too. Spoiler. But, yeah. I'm not going to say who dies. But, yes. Things do happen. It would be interesting to see a TV show or a movie series based on these books. Yeah, I would definitely watch that. And I would hope that they got the proper budget for it to like do it properly, Yeah. I guess that's all I can say without giving spoilers. Like, yeah, it is a good book. Go read it. Read the whole series. Get the 6th book too, the anthology. I have been reading some of the stories in there so far. I'm not done reading it yet, but I'm so far so good. Enjoyable. It is kind of a case though, where I kind of wish like you knew like the reading order of like when to read these stories so you could read them in order. Like, yeah. So it's more of a case of like I read most of these before I even got to that. And then I was like, oh, okay. I read some of them, and then I read this one. Actually, technically I read Turan Wanderer, and then this one. And now I'm going back to reading that one. So, if they're out of order, who cares? It's, it's just the way it is sometimes. Anyway, I'm Charles Moffat. Please go check out this book by Lloyd Alexander, and go check out my books, which are available at amazon.com/author/Moffat, Moffat, and do not eat the yellow flowers because they're super poisonous and they will paralyze you. Yeah. Or if you eat too many, they'll kill you. Yeah, don't do that. Okay. Bye-bye.